Welcome to Easily Entertained. My name is Bryson Olson, and here we talk about all aspects of entertainment. It's always a good time. Today, we are talking about Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, the supposed last movie of the Tom Cruise era of Mission Impossible. It's not to say that they won't keep doing Mission Impossible movies, but this is supposedly the last one that Tom Cruise is going to be in, anyway. And I thought it was pretty good. Let's just dive in, okay?
I need you to trust me. One last time.
So as all Mission Impossible movies, the stakes are high in this story, okay? Things are about to be crazy. The world could potentially end. And this one, it's kind of like really big. Like, I feel like in a lot of the other ones, it's like, oh, we could cause some disruption, but not like the world-ending event. Okay, this is like endgame for the Avengers franchise. That's what this movie is for Mission Impossible, I feel like, where it's huge stakes, it's fate of the world type stuff. And yeah, they kind of had the fate of the world thing like within the last three, like since Fallout, I think. But since then, it's more like it's big things, but it's less stakes in the previous movies. But these ones, they have been high stakes, okay? Like, if the mission fails, which you know it's not going to, if the mission fails, the world's gonna end. In this one, it's like they're trying to stop an AI from getting the nuclear codes of all the major countries and just bombing the world, getting rid of all humans, basically. And, that's a pretty big stake. Okay, and once again, like I said in the last video, they made AI the villain. It's awesome. It's a wonderful time. But I do like the Mission Impossible movies do this. They always amp up the stakes, and I feel like they've tried to do that with every additional iteration to just kind of keep expanding on it. Like how big can they make it? How devastating could the world turn out? Is it a virus? Is it an organization? Is it an AI? Is it whatever? It is, how do we make the stakes as big as they can? And I think they do a really good job at culminating it all in this final iteration of the Mission Impossible franchise. I just think they do a really good job at it. And they do a great job at tying things back to some of the other movies. Like, obviously, like the more recent ones, it's like because of like cast and stuff that is like kind of connecting with everything. But also they like called back to like the very beginning of like the first Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise, like the thing he nabbed in there. What was it called? Like the rabbit's foot or something. Or they like call back to breaking into a vault, and the guy that was managing that vault, he's in this movie. They just did a good job of bringing the entire franchise together at the very end to really amp up the story. And it is kind of like how Avengers did it, where they brought everyone together. It's a culmination of the last couple decades of Mission Impossible. Because they've been doing it for almost 30 years. The Mission Impossible property is technically older because there was Mission Impossible before the franchise that we are currently aware of. But the current era of Mission Impossible, 1996. And I like that they brought it all together. It wasn't just, oh, we're just going to make it simple and send it off. Like, they made it huge, and you have to. It's the Tom Cruise series. It's what he's really well known for. Like, obviously there's things like Top Gun, but Mission Impossible, like, you can't think of Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise separately. If you think of Mission Impossible, you're going to think of Tom Cruise. If you think of Tom Cruise, you're probably going to think of Mission Impossible. They are basically just one and the same. And it's big, and they have the practical stunts and stuff that it's so well known for that kind of gets made fun of sometimes. Like, Tom Cruise will do so much for a headshot that no one else will do. And that's like the exciting part about it. They keep ramping things up. And the last one, The Dead Reckoning, That one, I think people were just a little bit like, meh. Like, I liked it. I thought it was a decent movie, but it also, like, they weren't selling stuff on like the practical effects as much, which kind of made it feel like, this was not as fun. But they tried to do that more with this one, which I think was a very good idea, because that's what we were there for. We're like, come on, what kind of practical effects are we talking about here? You know, I want the good stuff. I want it to look so freaking cool. And that's how you amp up the stakes as well. You know, Tom Cruise is hanging on the outside of that plane as it's flying and inverted and old. It's crazy, but it's awesome. I love how they're able to produce all this stuff and amp it up so that while we know Ethan Hunt is going to make it out alive, we do know it's going to be kind of suspenseful in order to get there. And I absolutely love that part about the story of The Final Reckoning and really just the Mission Impossible franchise as a whole. I just think they do a great job with that.
Put myself into a worst case scenario, and how fast does it take me to recover, which all of these cases are recoverable.
Okay, so I briefly touched on it in the story section as well, but also it's a huge part of Mission Impossible. We just have to talk about it. That's the action, the stunts, the fighting. It is like some of the best in Hollywood. Practical like stunts, definitely up there. You know, it is right at the top. And I think that is in huge part due to Tom Cruise, because he always opts to do stunts for himself. I'm sure there are certain situations where he has not done something, but Tom Cruise is Mission Impossible. He's the reason they're able to make it feel so effective and high tension, is because he will actually do the stunts. I'm sure insurance hates him because they're like, oh my gosh, he's the face. What if he gets hurt? It'll be crazy. I'm sure that actually scares the crap out of them, but it sells it for us as the audience. Sometimes you can tell when it's a stunt double, when it's a like face swap, that's what it was called. It just doesn't always feel the same. But you know, if Tom Cruise is there, it's going to be real. You know, they're going to make, you know, it's actually them in the plane, hanging off the plane, or scaling a building, or holding their breath for like 6 minutes. It's crazy, but it's what sells it. You know, you feel connected with these people because you know it's not something they're faking. Like, you know, it's like it's fake as a movie. The scenario is fake, but you know the stunt and the actual action that's going on is not really fake. Even the fight choreography in these movies is just taken to a level that feels so much more impactful than you always see in action movies. You know, superhero movies, while I feel like they've gotten sort of better, sometimes you're like, wow, there's no impact going on at all in here. Like, an extreme example is like Captain America Brave New World. I talked about that recently, where I did not really care for the fight scenes because it didn't feel like they were very impactful. But in this one, I felt like they did a solid job. You know, I feel like they always do good in Mission Impossible to make the fights feel cohesive and feel powerful. You feel proud of when certain characters get a leg up. Like if Ethan Hunt is knocked down, it's really exciting when he gets the upper hand, and it's just great. And I feel like they do it in a way, like, obviously it's Hollywood, it's dramatized, but you feel like a spy. You know, you feel like this is how a spy would go about doing things, and just like the intricacies, like behind the scenes and stuff, it feels exciting. And obviously it's dramatized, so it's obviously probably not true, but you as the audience, you're sold with everything that goes into it. The action, the stunts, the heist, the plan, everything. It just feels right, and it feels good to connect with, you know, and it adds to the story, and you can kind of disassociate for a moment where it's not just, oh, I'm watching a movie. You're like, oh, I feel like I'm part of the action. It's a movie that's meant for the big screen, where you can just go in and enjoy yourself. The Final Reckoning is like that. It's like that endgame experience where you're like, yes, this is where it all comes together and gets an amazing send-off. It's just, it's so good. I just like how they're able to do that. I don't think this is my favorite of the Mission Impossible movies. I think Fallout might be my favorite of the franchise. I just thought they did that one so good. That one is like kind of what reinvigorated my interest in Mission Impossible. I had watched the previous ones before, but that one, it was like the trailer and the action and the story. That one just really sold me. So I loved Fallout. That one is probably my favorite of the franchise, but The Final Reckoning, I think, does really good at bringing it all together, you know, giving the franchise a good end and giving the like pretty much 30 years that we've had of Tom Cruise a good send-off. So that'll kind of bring me into my next section.
Everything you are, everything you've done has come to this.
So like I've kind of said throughout the episode, I feel like The Final Reckoning is just the perfect send-off to the Tom Cruise era of Mission Impossible. And that's kind of what the whole thing feels like. That's why they like talk about the different missions. They bring some things back to call back to them and make it feel like an encapsulated universe. You know, it feels like Endgame, but I also feel like it is like a bittersweet send-off almost, because these movies have been going on for a while. You know, like I said, they've been going on almost 30 years, which is crazy. But that means they've been going on for so long that people have connected with them. They feel a part of them. It feels like a universe. It is exciting. It's kind of sad to see it change. You know, we've, like, for me, like I was born in 2000, I've basically grown up with the Mission Impossible franchise. I've seen some of the movies as they've come out and seen them grow. And so it feels almost kind of sad to be like, and they're gonna finish them off. But I think it's good. You know, I think you shouldn't have to continue to do a franchise on too long. There are certain franchises that I feel like they can keep making interesting stories, which I do like, but it is sometimes better for a franchise to stop, you know, to end it off at a really solid point, and then we go on. And then it feels enclosed. It feels like you're not leaving something off. Like, sure, the Mission Impossible franchise could continue on with more side stories, and it would not surprise me if they do that. I would like if they do that and not use the Mission Impossible, like not call the movie Mission Impossible blank, but rather like a Mission Impossible story, similar to like how they do in like Star Wars, like a Star Wars story, Rogue One or Solo, something like that, where it can be set in universe to kind of tie into things. But I think that main storyline, like, just cut it off. I think don't quit, you know, don't go too far, you know when you've got a good thing and when to stop. Certain franchises, like I said, certain franchises I think can like just kind of continue on going if they can keep coming up with new unique ideas. Like I'm a shill for this franchise and I can't wait to review the new movie, the Jurassic World franchise. I'm so excited for Jurassic World Rebirth, just because I like dinosaurs, so they can continue making those movies and I will never have a complaint. But I do think sometimes you're like, you gotta take a step back, and maybe they'll continue with the Mission Impossible name and do a good thing, but who knows. But this movie in specific, it kind of reminds me in the Marvel universe, like after Endgame, it kind of felt like things were falling off, but you know, they picked it back up. Mission Impossible could have a similar thing. But like I said, it feels like Endgame, and it also kind of feels like the second Black Panther movie, where obviously very different premises, but it does feel like a send-off. It feels like an homage to the franchise, where so many of us have grown up with the franchise or have connected with it in some way or just appreciated it. And so you get to look back on all the memories of Mission Impossible. And I think that's how you bring a franchise to its end. You know, you don't always have to make it a big spectacle, but for a movie like this, you have to. And it's a big screen kind of thing. If you haven't seen it on the big screen, I don't know how you got this far in the episode, but you should definitely go see it at the theater while it's in theaters, because this is the kind of movie where you're like, this has to be seen how it's meant to be. Huge, big, it's exciting. That's what we got to have. You know, I like movies that can really fit that. And I feel like we're trying to go back to that for a lot of things. And I think Mission Impossible is kind of helping push that. While this is like the last one of the main franchise, supposedly, I hope we get more movies that they're like, we have to see this on the big screen. Like, you had Top Gun Maverick, which was a grand return to that same thing. You have Thunderbolts, you have Jurassic World, you had Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, there are movies that are just, they're meant to be seen big, you know, and this was one of those movies. You know, if you're gonna have a send-off, you can't just put that on a streaming service all haphazardly. You gotta have it on the big screen. And so I like that they did that with this movie. It feels good, you know. And like I said at the beginning, it kind of feels sad that the movie the series, goodness, has come to an end, basically. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. You know, we can look back and enjoy it. You can go back and rewatch the movies and just have a good time. It's like the Harry Potter series, where, you know, we don't like J.K. Rowling as a person, but the movies, fun. They feel like their own thing. And you can go back and rewatch those, and it's a closed universe, and that's totally fine. You know, there's technically like the Fantastic Beasts movies, but a lot of people don't talk about those. I like the first one. The first one's pretty good. I do like that one. But it's the same kind of thing where it's enclosed and it feels good. You know, it ends off and you're like, well, I could get more, but I'm not going to be hugely disappointed if things don't come of anything else later. That's how the Mission Impossible franchise is, I think, in my opinion. I just think it was good. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on The Final Reckoning, the final, supposedly, movie of Mission Impossible. It's pretty good. If you made it this far, I don't know how you did. I'm sorry, I probably spoiled a lot. Maybe. I don't know. It was pretty good, though. But as for our rating, and I think I can't rate this movie on its own. You know, I think I can, but because of the meaning of it, I think I just have to rate the Mission Impossible series as a whole. And I gotta say, it's a go-to series. You know, it's a solid franchise. You can pick any Mission Impossible movie and have a good time and pretty much know what is going on. Like, someone who hasn't watched the first couple Mission Impossibles could watch like Fallout or Dead Reckoning, and I feel like be pretty understanding of what's going on. Probably the Final Reckoning, you would need to at least have seen Dead Reckoning to do, but all of them I feel like are pretty good to just turn on and have a good time. And I really like that about the Mission Impossible franchise. You can't always do that with every franchise. Marvel, I'm looking at you. I love Marvel, but you have to watch earlier movies you can kind of do that with, but you can't always do that with the newer movies, which kind of sucks. But I would say Mission Impossible as a whole, go to. The Final Reckoning, maybe quotable. Nah, maybe right mood. Maybe it's a good movie. It's just not the first Mission Impossible that I would pick, obviously, because it kind of needs another one. But as a whole, Mission Impossible is definitely a go-to. If you have a different rating for the Mission Impossible franchise or The Final Reckoning, let me know down in the comments. But that is it for this episode of Easily Entertained. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe so you can be notified of all new episodes every Tuesday. It's always a great time. And if you have any suggestions for future media productions, there we go, that you would like to hear me talk about, maybe let me know down in the comments as well. But until next time, bye.